Okay, welcome everybody. I'm calling the meeting to order at 9:30. My name is Nancy Vandell and I'm the chair. I just want to welcome Susan to be as a full-fledged member of our committee. Glad to have you on board, Susan.
Thank you.
And thank you for participating all this time as a guest. So Sarah Absher is going to be joining us in a little bit. Why don't we go ahead and start with our conflict of interest declarations. I have none that I know of.
Michael Beachley, I have no conflicts of interest.
Tom Scheib, no conflicts.
Wyatt Angelo, no conflicts.
Susan Schomburg, no conflicts.
Great, thank you. So on the minutes, did you get my email late
Yes,
last
I
night?
did.
Michael?
And I just now finished those up and sent them all out to everybody.
Okay, so why don't we defer those until the end of the meeting, and people, could you please take a look at the minutes that Michael set out just now? I see them, Michael, thank you.
Yep.
And then we'll go back and do see if there are any additions or corrections. Thank you, Michael, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, the chair's report. Basically, I don't have a lot of report to give. It's kind of on the other parts of the agenda. So I'm just going to move on. The only thing I'm going to say is that I think there are going to be certain parts of the agenda that welcome, Sarah. That I'm going to defer because we have Sarah here today, and I think we can just focus our time on the membership and voting parts of the agenda. So Tom and I have been working on a number of different items, including the document labeling standard. Tom has developed a form for comment and input that we can get to if we get through the membership part, and a comment spreadsheet that look great. But for this, I suggest, if there are no objections, that we go ahead and move those toward the end of the meeting and or just to the next meeting so that we can really focus on the substantive changes in the membership area that's so important. Is that any objections to that? Okay. So I want to welcome Sarah Absher to our meeting. It's wonderful having you today, Sarah, because you are muted. So as we tackle this number one priority change, before we get to that, I just want to give a quick recap on the November 14th meeting. For those of you who weren't there, the bylaws amendment was approved, I believe unanimously. Susan was elected to the committee unanimously for sure, and we're so thrilled to have you, Susan. We had a positive reception to all of our proposals, including a format change to Robert's Rules of Order, the editorial changes that Tom came up with and that we all reviewed and commented on. Their agreement to start now with substantive changes using the reformatted document that I sent all of you on the 14th of October. That document that Tom has reformatted into Robert's Rules of Order and put in all of the different editorial changes is kind of our clean slate to work with. And then the emphasis on being open, transparent, welcoming people to our meetings. And I said earlier, but since we started, we have guest Roger Wicklund today, and welcome, Roger. We'll have public comment toward the end, and it looks like Hillary Gibson just joined us, so welcome, Hillary. So the revised bylaws amendment that was approved at the October 14th meeting has been put on the website as the new replacement document. I did go ahead and take off the earlier approval versions of it. According to Robert's rules, there's no reason to have all those earlier approval. So the approval is showing as October 14th, 2023. Are there any questions about the October 14th meeting before we move on? Okay, sounds good. So we're deferring the next item, the Bylaws Committee webpage, to the next meeting. There has been quite a bit of discussion with Jeff and Tom and I on the different parts of the webpage, but we're not quite ready to go into that today. Plus, we want to focus on our membership and voting. So one of our action items from the last meeting was the editorial change document that we've all commented on. I think everybody's had quite a bit of time to review that. Could we get a motion to approve that editorial change document?
I would so move.
Is there a sec? Since you wrote it, yeah. Is there a second?
second.
Okay, no second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion to approve the editorial change document? And we'll put that on the website. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. And for our guests, if you weren't at the October 14th meeting, basically what that document is it's looked at all of the non-substantive changes. It's been the original bylaws were numbered. They hadn't been numbered before. The format was changed to Robert's Rules of Order with all of the numbering changed over to that. And and then there were just various editorial changes that our illustrious editor, Tom Sipe, did, and that we all took a look at. But nothing substantive was changed. There were some substantive notes that were made in a document of things for us to look at as we go forward, but those were not put in the actual document. So we're on to the editorial change, the bylaws review regarding membership voting in district. So I sent you all the current version of our current starting document for that wording. And I can try to share it, or Tom, do you have it handy? What I sent last night?
I'm in a different environment than I'm used to, so.
Okay, let me try.
If you can wing it, and if not, then we'll fumble together.
I'll try. Sarah, are you volunteering to share it?
I can try. Yeah, I've got them both. I've got two screens and I've got the documents that you sent to me in the email, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So I wanted to share the one that is.
I've got the membership section suggestions.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, no, the other one.
The other one. Okay. Nope, I got it right here.
So
The
I don't know if
membership
I have
and
to give
voting
you permission
sections.
or not. Yes, thank you.
Okay, let's see.
So for everybody who's here, I'm trying an iPad and I don't know how to use an iPad very well, so I should have practiced.
I'm there too.
Okay, Tom's my backup, sure. So
Yeah, I do not have sharing.
I'm on one too.
okay, how do I?
Let's see.
sharing. Maybe I can actually do it here.
It's really icky. There's only one screen. It's horrible.
This is embarrassing.
Let's see. Which one are we looking for?
We're looking for the one that has the original or the starting point wording on the. Allow all participants to share screen. Okay, so Sarah, you should be able to share now.
Okay, yes, I can. All right, screen one. Okay, so let me, how's that?
I think that's good.
Okay. Everybody see
and-
okay?
Yes,
Okay,
So-
you tell me when to scroll and I'll scroll, Nancy.
thank you. Okay, so this is the membership section currently. It's just been reformatted, et cetera. But what Tom did was take membership that was in various sections of the original bylaws and consolidate them into this one section. So, for example, the district information is actually in this membership section, whereas before it was in kind of one of the first sections. This is why we're including district boundaries. So that's going to be one of the areas of discussion, is what should the district boundaries be? And then the NCAC shall have an area of responsibility. This is the current wording that includes Cannery Hill to the north, Slab Creek Road to the south. Membership is open to all legal residents of the United States who are at least 18 years old and are at least one of the following within the NCAC area: resident, property owner, business operator. So those 4 areas need some work. So they're one of our discussion topics of other categories. And then a copy of the bylaws, meeting notes, agendas, and other relevant documents should be available to each member and shall also be posted on the NCAC website. Membership in the NCAC extends full rights of participation, including the right of voting in NCAC meetings. Voting membership must be confirmed at each meeting by signing the attendance sheet at the meeting that the member votes in if NCAC meets at a physical location, and electronically registering if NCAC holds an electronic meeting. So one of the questions that we're looking at today is, how do we gather the information? What information do we want the bylaws to require for registration? And it shall include both the name and the address of the registering member to allow confirmation of voter eligibility. One issue there is privacy. Who's holding the actual address? And is it the address of the property that someone might be working at or living at or owning or renting, or is it their home address? A lot of things are very unclear in there. Contributions will always be encouraged. Contributions and fundraising activities shall be used to offset, can you please scroll, the cost of the NCAC? Does that belong in there? So all these are questions. And then can you please scroll to the next page?
So sorry, Nancy.
There's another page
um,
that's on voting. I
Michael,
guess we could just get to voting later.
Nancy, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
Michael did have his hand up. I don't know if you
Oh,
saw that. So I don't know
I
if you
did
want to keep
not.
scrolling or wait, see if his question is
No,
about
thank
this.
you. I cannot see that, Michael.
That's okay. In terms of that list
Thank
of
you, Sarah.
owners, can you scroll up there you go. I think employees might be added to that list. I'm thinking particularly of, people who work at the inn, or people who work at the store or restaurant and so on, that employees of the area, and the rest of them I think are there, the ones that I reviewed.
Thank you, Michael. I think
Business owner and business operator, those I think employee probably covers business operator.
so. There are a number of different documents that we need to be able to see, and I mean, to types of categories. I was just trying to do an overview. So, but you're right, Michael. I think that's one. Another is a representative of a trust. That's another one. That's what I am. That's not mentioned in there too. But so if we go back to screen sharing, for some reason,
Oh,
I have a question for Sarah in terms of the philosophy of the county, because we have to satisfy our constituents, but we're there at the pleasure of the county. Zara, it's a little bit of a side thing, but I think it's important to this discussion. We have our organization is in place of a regular town government. And that's my concept. And as such, somebody who is an employee in a town wouldn't actually get a vote in the election for mayor. So how close to an analog to a kind of a government representational thing, or is it just people who care?
Mhm.
Can you answer that,
Tom,
Sarah?
yeah, I think that's a great question. So if you go back and you look at the board order that created the CACs and talks about roles and responsibilities, it is an advisory body that largely their primary focus is to comment on land use proposals.
Yes,
Right. So and I agree in spirit with you. My predecessor was the one that created the CACs. And the reason for that was that citizen involvement, because you don't have a self-functioning government or municipality. It was a way to organize the community to provide comments and feedback and an advisory role. So I think it has been intended, and you can see this with consistency with other bylaws, to leave it to the 4 bullets that are already here. I think Nancy brings up a good point about trustees. Employees have never been a part of the discussion. I think the intent was people who live or have some sort of ownership interest or operate a business in a community. With the employees, I love the inclusivity, but one thing I would be concerned about is, are you going to get a rolling register of who's employed at each business to verify their status? I'm not sure
It's
if
more
some
difficult than
businesses-
that.
Yeah.
We have employees that are working in this area right now.
Mhm.
For instance, installing fiber optic cable,
Mhm.
who may live in Garibaldi or Manzanita or Salem.
Mhm.
And I think it's way too hard to try to sort out the differences in the nature of employment, the physical location of employment, to go ahead and include employees as a general category.
Well, or how long do they have to be employed, or is it part-time that qualifies or full-time?
Yeah.
I have not seen employees added before. If that is what the group wants to propose, I am happy to run that by county council. But to Tom's point, it really has been functioning as that advisory board on land use issues for people who own property or have some sort of ownership interest or reside in these communities.
So Sarah, thank you. I think what we've been looking at is and I've gone ahead and figured out how to share the screen, so thank you.
Yeah.
Can you guys see it okay?
Mhm.
The whole screen or not?
Yeah.
I can't tell really what you guys can see.
Yes, I can see it.
The whole thing. Okay. So is that when they have business owner and business operator, I guess I personally was thinking that meant employees as well, but it's interesting to hear the clarification that you're not seeing it as that. I think that if we go back into the original bylaws purpose, it talks a little more than it's not just land use that are in the purpose of the original bylaws. Of course, I don't have that handy to share.
And Nancy, if you think it would be good to center the conversation around the board order that specifically highlights and appoints the CACs, I'm happy to send a copy of that to you.
Thank you. That would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have that.
And yeah, that would be helpful. So yeah, because that's been part of the discussion of, so originally what I was trying to do is just go through what the current thing is for membership. The second area that we're hoping to get to today is voting, because that also relates to membership and there's been a lot of somewhat confusion over that. But just on membership itself, we have been, it would clarify it a lot. I don't know at this point who the members have been, if there really has been much of a distinction with people that are employees before. But one of the concerns that we were having in previous meetings is that if a company of say that has say 50 or 100 people sends their employees out to a meeting to do a vote on something that would be helpful for the company, even if the employees don't live in Nescoin or have full-time work even in Nescoin, that could be a real problem. And so that was one of the concerns. And another question that we've had come up is what constitutes a resident or a property owner? Is it how many would someone's grandchildren who are over 18 be able to be members of the NCAC? So we're trying to figure out how to define what would be and really make it very clear to everybody what would be considered a resident.
Well, I'm not prepared to settle on any of these. I like the discussion, and
Exactly.
I think the discussion is worthy. And so, what pops into my mind is that an owner of record might be a consideration rather than an owner and their children and their grandchildren and their in-laws and so on and so forth. But an owner of record. And that could be an owner plus the owner's spouse and so on. It seems to me that would satisfy that, and also in conjunction with that, it seems to me that we have to have some sort of simple process of registration, not only for the meeting itself, but in terms of how anybody who wants to participate is qualified to participate according to the bylaws. And that may take some work. I mean, there may be a necessity for a formal registration process once a year or something of that sort. And there could be automatic calendar driven request for re-registration, let's say in January every year or whatever. It could be an automatic kind of thing, but at least there's a formal list of who is a member.
Yeah, I think good. Nancy, thank you. I was going to suggest that actually I'd address that in the proposition.
Right. So let's go to these suggestions. Wyatt sent in a suggested clause and a paragraph, and Tom had some other thoughts that I sent you all last night. They had sent it quite a while back. So, Tom, since Michael has talked about this, and I agree with you, I should have probably said at the beginning, we don't intend to settle this issue today. This is an opportunity to have a discussion. We'll also, of course, be going out and getting input from the community, and there will be time for public comment at the end for our guests. But definitely, it's time for a good discussion on it. So, Tom, why don't you go ahead and respond to what Michael was talking about with your document? So there are two parts in this document. The first one is a paragraph that Wyatt sent in, and we'll get to that in a moment. And then Tom had more information here.
Okay, excuse me. So I took the text that was relevant to the membership part and did sort of a brute force change on that, change bars. So the things in red are the things that I added, and I believe only one strikeout. And in fact, I think there's Sarah, you may or may not know that I'm an editor, and I just saw an edit that I should have made and didn't. So that flummoxed me for a minute. I'm missing an at in a sentence. So anyway, the things of germane that I added were who identify as a citizen of Nescoin. Now that has no effect other than setting the tenor for who we would like to have as participants in our organization. So it's window dressing, but I think it's kind of important to say out front, you've got to identify that you're really part of this community to be really somebody who should say what this community should be. And then I said these are qualifications. Now, we had talked about employees of a business. The discussion today has convinced me the employee that's probably someplace we don't want to go. So I would respectfully withdraw that suggestion. You know, Michael had mentioned it before and we had talked about it. And I thought it was a good idea, but I don't think that's going to be dangerous. So we don't need to decide that. Anyway, I now no longer feel very comfortable about that. But then I had the qualification process, and that is something that perhaps can be useful. It's a matter of at least one time you have to supply your name, email address, local address. In other words, what is your local stake? Might be a residence, might be a business, whatever. You know, what the qualifications is, what are you a resident, property owner, or I think in a subsequent version of this, I said owner or trustee. So what are the qualifications? So I live on South Beach Road. I'm a resident. I live in Nest Cove, and I'm a owner of a property, rental property. So that sort of thing. We need to have some way of contacting people. So a mailing address. I'm not hard over on that, but I think that would be important. Now that's different than the local address. It can be. No, me, it's the same. Nancy may not be the same. So having a way of contacting physical mail, maybe I'm just old fashioned. And then a phone number. I don't think that is required, but it would be nice to have. So that single qualification. Now that's above and beyond registering for a particular meeting.
Yep.
When you register for a particular meeting, you just say, I'm this person and I'm already registered in the system. And I think we can just accumulate people. I don't think we need to be too hard over on winnowing out people who no longer should be in it. If you're in it once, it's probably good enough, and we're not the police, so we don't care. I'm sorry.
Tom,
Little flippant. Yes.
could I make a suggestion on your red line under membership?
Sure.
Quote, who identify as a citizen of UNESCO, and that I'm a little uncomfortable with that. Let me suggest, just for the purposes of our discussion here, who identify as a member of the Nescoan community.
Okay.
What do you think? I mean,
That's a
what
little
is a
less strong,
citizen?
and it's
What
probably
is it?
more. It's
Yeah.
a little less strong.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's
yeah,
probably more
the
appropriate.
citizen word is that's a little bit of a red flag. What is a citizen? That's a concern. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, if you'll make that note, so that in the thanks. I don't have the capability right now.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree that that is a strong statement, and yours is probably more appropriate.
member of the community. Yeah, and I'm perfectly willing to drop employee. I can see where that's a bag of worms.
I've got something as well that jumped out at me. Membership is open to all legal residents of the United States. I know that there are property owners in Nescoan who are Canadian citizens.
Oh,
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
Okay, excellent.
that
There's
sounds
a
like
hole.
another possible change then would be to just say, well,
So they
membership
don't
is open to everybody
Who meets the qualifications?
meets the
It's as simple as that. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean,
Who is
Good
at least
point,
18
Susan.
years of age?
Yeah,
okay.
interesting.
That would. I feel pretty stupid. Thank you.
No, that's a really good point. I didn't know that either. So I know, Tom, when you talked about citizen in the past, you had mentioned that citizen is part of our committee, the Nescoan
Yeah.
Community Advisory Committee. Actually, I guess it's not. So it's not really the Citizens Advisory Committee. So I think Tom's or Michael's point is a good one, and it sounds like you agree with that, correct?
Yes, I believe I agree with all of his points. What I will try to do in the next few days is send to you a recast of that based on our discussion. but it's
That
probably going
sounds
to take
good.
a couple of iterations because, as I say, my note taking and I'm still a little bit foggy. So,
How about, can I just give a real quick recap? You can
Sure.
use it or not. That just for the purposes of discussion. Membership is open to all persons who are at least 18 years of age and have at least one of the following qualifications.
I would like to keep in the identify as a Nesquan community member. I think that's important.
Okay, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
I
Yeah.
agree. That sounds good. Any objections to that? The next, any objections to that? I mean, obviously we'll probably we'll do some reworking, but I think that sounds good. Okay. Thank you, Michael. So the question of employee of a business, I mean, so I'm hearing kind of a possible consensus that we don't include employee of a business. Let's have some discussion on that. What do you all think about that?
I said my
Any
piece.
objections to taking the employee of a business off the list?
Well, I
My,
would say unless they live in Nescoin and own in Nescoin.
well,
They
But
could
that's
be an
different
employee.
yeah, but
I know an employee of the Nescoin store that owns in Nescoin.
yeah, but
So
then that
then they're a
person,
resident.
that person would
Yeah,
then
yeah, true,
automatically qualify
true,
as a
yeah.
resident or a property owner,
Yeah.
so they would be there anyway. My concern originally, I was going to throw in employee because, you know, in earlier discussions, we wanted to be inclusive. But at the same time, when we too talk about the concerns of the organization, they really have to do with land use and related concepts, not jobs. Unless we add jobs or employment or whatever as a criterion, then it really doesn't fit. And I'm satisfied with dropping that. We can always come back later and, you know, revisit it sometime in the future.
What do we do about the farmer's market that's seasonal? That would be considered a business operator.
Good question. I thought about that
Mm.
and I didn't have a good solution.
I know.
Well, I can jump either way on that, Susan. I know you mentioned that a few meetings ago, and it's a good point, but there's a lot of seasonal positions that might qualify as well. And they come in for business opportunities, but you know, that's not really a Nescoin business. It's just a place that Nescoin provides for them to sell their goods. And they do the same thing in Eugene, and they do the same thing in Corvallis or whatever. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I want to hear some more discussion on that.
I think we still have to deal with the issue of beneficial interests in real estate that are created by, if you want to call them legal fictions, but you know, the trustee issue came up initially. I've been thinking about that since I wrote the initial, my initial thoughts about it. There are also the long-term leasehold situations where people lease properties for an extended period of time, whether they be residential or commercial or otherwise.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, renters. Yes, renters. But you know, resident and renters could be in the same category, but leaseholders and so on. That's another interesting way of looking at it. Thanks, Wyatt. That's a good point.
Yeah, but there's a little bit more to it. At least I think you said, Wyatt, more than maybe you said. But essentially, a leaseholder may not actually be a renter, may not actually have residence, may be a person who facilitates other people renting. So that's a different flavor than we have in there now. So that, and I think that's appropriate to figure out how to get that into.
I mean, let's put it into an Oregon context. What about a long-term timber lease?
Well, it seems like the owner of that lease would have some interest in, legitimate interest in participation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you're
So-
trying to do is identify stakeholders.
Yeah,
Right.
And
appropriate stakeholders.
exactly. And I think we've got to kind of broaden our thoughts about what those could include.
Great point.
What about the RV park?
Yeah. What about that? I noticed that in the map that was shown of the area of constituency, the RV park was cut out. And I thought to myself, that was kind of not very, didn't seem okay. So that is going to be an area for, now, to me, that they
So-
are renters, they rent a piece of property. So
I would view the RV park in the same fashion that I would view any party house that's owned by a member but is rented out occasionally to whomever, VBRO or whatever. They're not voters, the renters,
true.
but
Well, some of them are residents.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's
What-
exactly where I was thinking.
you mean they actually live in the RV park?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or mailman.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
there
no,
you
I
go.
think they would qualify as a resident. What
Yeah.
you're saying, Tom, is that the district boundaries don't encompass the RV park, correct? And
Yeah, it
and
is.
where
it
are
is-
those district boundaries coming from? There, are they from our current bylaws, or are they from the new Nescoin?
Our bylaws are amazingly woolly
CNC.
on what's included. So
Yeah.
no, it's not in our current one. But if you go to the Tillamook County map and you click on our area, it will highlight a map. It will highlight a blue area, which shows the area of constituency for Nescoin community. That is a definition of what we are. Now, I don't know that that should be the definition.
Sarah, isn't there, doesn't the RV park fall within one of the defined zoning areas for Nescoin?
Thank you, Wyatt. So yeah, a couple of things. So the map that Tom is referring to is the community boundary map. So again, the CAC and the community plan and the zoning districts are only focused on those areas within the boundary. The RV park has a different zoning. It was not included in your community boundary. It can be included in your membership boundary, like Slab Creek and up to Cannery Hill. But the boundary specific to what you're seeing on the map is the community of Nescoin as it's been statutorily defined as an unincorporated community meeting the statewide land use goals.
Being this is
So-
a land use committee, why aren't we using the areas defined in the Tillamook planning documents as the zoning areas for Nescoin? Which is what I put in my membership thoughts.
So some unincorporated communities, their membership boundary for their CAC is the boundary of the community because the CACs were formed as a citizen advisory group to advise the county on land use matters.
So my
So
concern
Sarah, in
would
terms
be,
of
Oh, I'm
Sarah, in
sorry.
terms of the community boundaries, was the zoning for the RV park, is that different because it was done later after the community boundaries were defined? Or was
No.
it just considered something that was completely separate from the Nescoin community?
The RV park is grandfathered in. An exception to the statewide planning goals was not taken back in the 70s for that RV park.
So what does that mean?
So what that means is when the county had to, when we did our comprehensive plan in the 70s, and we worked on zoning districts countywide, the state gave us under state law specific criteria to determine built and committed areas from other areas in the county. I mean, going way back, Tillamook County would have had the 7 incorporated cities zone for residential commercial, and then everything else would have been farm or forest zones. And so then
Okay.
what the county had to do was start looking and doing an analysis of different pockets, like, well, where does development also occur, which was how Nescoin, Pacific City, and others got their zoning districts and those urbanized unincorporated community boundaries. The analysis at the time None of us were here, but the RV park must not have met the criteria to be included in some sort of commercial, urbanized, or high-density residential zoning at that time. So it was an
Still-
intentional decision made to not urbanize or make that RV park eligible for urbanization.
Okay,
Is
so
it still,
for
still
our
the county's
purposes, then,
intent?
for our
Go ahead.
purposes, then we would have to make an exception and get county approval if we wanted to include the RV park. No? We
Not
could
for the
just do it?
membership. You can for the members. So we've got two different boundaries. We've got the planning boundaries, and then you've got your membership boundary, which can be on the planning boundary.
Okay,
The RV park can be included in the membership boundary, but I would have to overhaul your entire planning program and demonstrate to the state that under state law, we can change your community boundary, which I cannot do. The long and short of it, we can't do it. So the planning, the community boundary is where it is. It's not
Yes.
going to change.
So Sarah, I have a question about the community boundary. When we are, as a community, doing the Nesquin community plan, is it accurate to say then that the only people that can vote on the Nesquin community plan are those people within the boundary because it impacts them directly, rather
It-
than the membership of the NCAC?
That's up to your bylaws. That's a conversation you can have. That's why some communities, their membership for their CAC is only it's the boundary of the planning piece that reflects their membership boundary. Nescoin wanted to be more inclusive and expand that. So right now, everyone who is in the membership boundary but not in the community could vote on land use related matters that only impact or that are only relate to the properties within the community.
So even
Oh.
though they don't reside in the communities, they could vote on things that impact people who are directly property owners,
That's
even though they have
exact-
even though they have no skin in the game to speak.
I have
Well,
heard that
if-
said in
if-
other areas, but there's another side of that too. So yeah, it just depends. It depends on what you decide.
so basically, if we were to include them, and is it unclear now whether we include them? It sounds like it may be unclear from the current description of the boundaries.
They are included. So Slab Creek Road to Cannery Hill, right? That description is everyone that is currently included in your membership boundary that goes beyond the planning boundary that the CACs were established for.
Can
Okay.
you explain?
And so
what
they're
is-
included currently, and so so for us to be able to, oops, if we were to change that, I don't know if anyone can see me or not. Anyway, if we were to change that, it would be, we might actually take people out who are currently members, and I
That is
would
correct.
hesitate to do that. And even if they may not have direct skin in the game, I think they could have effects from decisions that are made within the community boundaries, correct? So,
Yeah, and I think the RV park is part of the membership boundary.
right, currently.
Right, they're just not, they're outside of the community boundary where our planning work is focused.
Right. So that's really helpful. So
Okay,
for
could
us,
I-
we have to be really careful then. How many people reside in the RV park? Does anyone know?
Well,
Just
so let's talk
approximately?
about that real quick too. I think, so our RV parks, as they have been designed and even grandfathered in, are intended for transient use only, which means up to 6 months.
Ah,
Oh,
We have not enforced that, especially given our housing crisis. Most of our RV parks have tenants who reside for a period greater than 6 months. But I just, you can decide if it's something that you want to continue to address. I'm happy to visit with county council about that piece. That might be one of my homework pieces. But the intent of those RV parks, any RV park in the county, is 6 months.
okay.
Here, a
so it would
question
be
for
a-
you.
It'd be a business owner who would be impacted directly about membership, not membership. I have a point of information. The mention of Slab Creek Road as a boundary, I have no understanding of what that means.
So-
Is that the
yeah.
intersection of 101? Is that when it stops in Otis, or what does that mean?
So isn't that defined in your bylaws, Nancy? I
No.
think you read that a little bit ago. So maybe that's where
I mean-
some work comes as we create a new map for membership boundary, should you choose to go beyond the community boundary. And I can do that work for you. I'm happy
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, because I had, I read the statement and I tried to figure out all the different ways that could have meaning. And there were a lot of different ways, and some of which included a lot of Otis.
Well, and
Um,
Cannery Hill's pretty big too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so yeah, no, I think that might be a good exercise for this group. I can do the mapping work if you give me the direction with community feedback on where you'd like the membership boundary to be.
You know,
However that shakes out.
I read the boundaries of the NCA, Nesquin Community Association, and they seem to be clearer, a little more distinct than ours. I had the same problems Tom did. How far down that road, how far east of 101, how far north to Cannery Hill, that sort of thing. It's ambiguous to me. And I think for fairness sake, it ought to be fairly clear, because if somebody's sitting right on the line and they want to participate, but the leadership says, well, no, you're really on the other side, or whatever, then then we have a problem. Perhaps it'd be worthy to take a look at NCA and see what they have to say. Not that we need to do the same one, but at least it's clear.
And
Uh,
Tom,
Sarah,
you
There's a
got the
whole lot of
NCA
questions.
information too, didn't you?
I was thinking maybe that Sarah and I could get together sometime in the next week or so and develop some alternatives so we have some concrete things to discuss. Would that work?
Sure. Yeah.
So
And could I be a part of that too? I think that
Sure.
still keeps
Sure.
us within the bounds of the open meeting law.
I gotta get a
Great,
question
Tom.
in here at some point.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Sorry, Wyatt. I can't see who's got their hand up, but Wyatt.
I am concerned that if in fact the input that the county commissioners are going to solicit is only concerning decisions about land use within the community boundary. I mean, I live outside the community boundary, although I'm in the membership boundary. And at the same time, there are people who are outside the community boundary as well, like myself, who are like the RV park, but technically speaking, don't have a voice or wouldn't have a voice. So, I mean, are we going to be inclusive, or are we just going to have input, or will the commissioners only accept input from this committee on issues within the community boundary?
So can I jump in here real quick? So Wyatt, I want to make a couple of clarifications. The first one is, if it's a public process, anybody can provide input. And comments are not weighted against each other based on geographic location. Okay. So that's number one. Number two, the CAC is the role of the CAC is to solicit citizen input and provide that to me as the director, the planning commission, the board of county commissioners, whoever is the decision maker in that land use review process. It's a way to provide organized comments that reflect and represent the community. So the board is first and foremost is going to listen to everyone. Two, nothing is weighted heavier than the other. But I would say, that's where the membership boundary becomes important. It does not have to be limited to just those property owners or those properties within the community boundary. It can go outside. You guys have to decide.
I think that's excellent advice. And what occurs to me is that we've already expressed to each other a value in participation and inclusion. Primarily because the concepts and the ideas and the arguments are what is important more than whether or not you own a piece of property or whatever. And so at this point, I'm sort of in favor of including the RV park for two reasons. One, If they have something meaningful to say and being a member encourages them to say it, let's get them in. Let's hear what they have to say. The other one is that offhand, I would doubt that people living in an RV park are going to take focused concern about the internal machinations of a community and its land use. But if they do, the opportunity is there. And then the vote comes to the full membership as to whether or not their comments or their arguments are worthy. That's so. It's not a big deal for me, I guess, to include them. I would err on the side of inclusion then.
Here, Michael. I agree completely.
Yep.
Okay. So we've talked about Tom's suggestions here, and before we get up to Wyatt's, what do you guys think about the part about putting in? I think I'm hearing a consensus that we're not including employees of a business. We're including the other parts, and but in terms of having a one-time establishing membership in the NCAC by supplying this information to the secretary through a form on the website would probably be the easiest way to do that. What do you think about that part of it?
I think it's a good idea. I think that's a simple way of doing it. It satisfies the criteria of establishing membership to vote, and it provides a mechanism for establishing that criteria. And so I think that's good. That works.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments?
I agree. I think it's a good thing. I've seen other CACs do it, and I don't know how we store it, but I guess Jeff would come up with some way so that it's permanently stored on the cloud or something.
Well, the
Right.
question becomes how it's judged, not necessarily how the application is filed. So in other words, if I file an application that has this information, am I, as a matter of right now, a voting member? Or is there somebody who vets that application and says, yes, you are?
True.
Okay, is that a job you're looking for?
Absolutely not, Tom.
Okay.
But
Well,
that's going to come up.
yeah, it will.
True.
In other organizations, there are such things as a credential group or committee, an ad hoc group appointed by the leadership to review a person's registration, just and we can work on those rules of procedure within that particular group. And maybe it's a little bit too much of an overthrow to be developing a credentials committee, but somebody, you're right, Wyatt, somebody needs to at least do cursory review that they fit in the requirements.
Okay, so
Well, and in some
let me-
groups too. In some groups, there is a waiting period too before a vote. So that would be in the voting section that a member has to be certified as a member, within
30 days.
with at least a week or 2 weeks or 30 days or whatever to be able to vote. And that keeps, if there's some kind of a contentious issue coming up, it keeps a problem of having a whole bunch of people suddenly registering as members to skew a vote. I don't know if we want to consider that or not, but
No,
I'd
I think
like
we
to make
have
a
to.
comment
We have to
on that.
consider that. That's an important point, Nancy. It's a what if. It's a potential. It probably is not going to happen, but it's something that has to be considered. And that what if a group with a very narrow agenda, privately and quietly organizes themselves, and then they pop up at the last minute, and all of a sudden, boom.
So
That's
I'd
the
like
nightmare
to say that
scenario.
we have the bylaws are the philosophy of how we work. The mechanics of how we work is in a different document. I think Nancy has mentioned like an operations document before.
yeah, policies and
we can-
procedures or standing rules. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can put language here that says there is a mechanism for vetting. We don't have to specify it here. In fact,
Mhm.
shouldn't. And then the vetting can be done more dynamically as we understand the process better.
Yes,
That sounds
So Tom, are
excellent,
you thinking
Tom.
we leave that up to the board then?
yes.
Well, I think phase two of our charter here that we have gotten approval for on the 14th was to come up with policies and procedures and or standing rules once the bylaws are redone. So
Okay.
I kind of
I'm a
like the
great fan.
idea, Tom, of putting in something that a procedure will be developed for vetting members and for,
Yes,
that kind of thing. I think in
Can-
terms of, though,
can
I
we
think
say
it would
may?
have to be in the bylaws to note that voting, people can't vote until so much time has elapsed or something, if we decide we want to do that. So it's just another issue.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing a general consensus that we like this form, at least as a draft at this point. I want to break and go to Wyatt's paragraph here that he very carefully put together. But I also want to go back at some point here and talk about how many people who own a property or are a resident would be considered eligible to vote. And I think probably more inclusive is better than less inclusive, but that's come up as a question in the past. So can we go up and read Wyatt's paragraph here? Wyatt, would you like to read that?
Sure. Membership is open to all persons eligible to vote in Tillamook County, Oregon, and who reside within the boundaries of the geographic area of the Nescoin zones as defined in the Tillamook County Land Use Ordinance. County should be in there, by the way. Sections 3.320 through 3.328. And I should say, and in addition, all persons who own real property or hold a beneficial interest in real property situate therein. And then beneficial interest is defined, and it probably needs work, shall include but not be limited to a beneficiary or trustee of a trust, a person holding a life estate, or who is a shareholder, officer, member, or partner in a corporation, limited liability, or partnership. These qualifications shall be liberally construed.
interpret.
Okay, thank you.
Interpreted, sorry. It's a lawyer substitution.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really dense, and I believe I understand it, but well, our audience is, we got a fair number of lawyers here.
Nurse.
I'll grant you that.
Canadian owners, they who are not
yeah.
eligible to vote in Tillamook County.
Well, he's got the and. So I
The
think the and in addition is
Or
going
should
to
it
be
be
really
or?
important.
But
Could be.
the way I read it, it's you have to be eligible to vote and reside.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
depends on how
Susan-
you-
Yeah, it should be an or.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
should be an
Yeah.
or. It should be an
Yeah.
or.
But I'd like to stay away from really technical language if we can. This is not a contract. This is a statement of how this organization is meant to function. And in order for it to function, people have to understand it. And that's great lawyer prose, but it's not something that a lot of people are comfortable reading with. I've read a lot of that stuff, but sorry, but that was prejudicial, wasn't it? I've read a lot of documents that way, but I don't think that most people are going to find that to be welcoming.
I wonder, Tom, excuse my naivete, but what is a life estate?
A life estate is granted by virtue of a testamentary instrument, whether it be a will, possibly a trust, living trust, whereby a person is granted the right to occupy and use property for the duration of their life. But the ownership of the property, the record ownership, is in a name of somebody else.
Oh,
Okay, so could I suggest, Wyatt, that maybe if you would add those flavors of things that I missed into what I did, that maybe that might be a bit more digestible? Would that work?
I don't know, Tom. I'm trying to wrestle with that as you spoke. I'll need a little time to think about how to do that.
Yeah, I think we got a couple weeks.
Actually, I'm going to ask that we all try to get our documents out, and I've been bad myself.
I do like
out
the
at
way
least
he defined it,
a
the
week.
beneficial interest.
Excuse me, Susan.
I'm
I would
sorry.
like to get these documents in a week before the meetings in the future, so everybody has a chance to digest. And I will commit to doing that as well. Does that sound like we could do that?
Susan, or sorry, Nancy, also if something comes up that needs county
That's true.
council review, I do like the week because then, or if there's things you can give me a little bit earlier, or things I know we need to have vetted, it would probably be good to some of that stuff to do it before we get to the full membership too.
Right.
Can we say that we would like to have documents which are going to be discussed at the next meeting a week ahead? That's not a must, but it's a like to have as a goal.
I think so. That would include agenda minutes, any other documents a week ahead. So any objections to setting that as a policy
No.
of the committee? And if we have to change it, we can. Okay, Susan, I'm sorry.
Sorry
Susan?
about that. I just wanted to briefly comment. I do like what Wyatt said as far as defining beneficial interest. I think it's very clear. I'm not, it's very easy for me to understand this more legalese, but maybe it's because my parents have passed and I've been involved with lawyers quite a bit. I think that there are those in the community also who would understand specifically beneficial interest the way it's been worded.
Yeah, I like the wording of that too. I think if it's changed to an or.
Yeah, I think that's essential. Yeah.
I kind of like it.
So I'll take a pass at amalgamating those two and
Okay.
send it out. And apologies in advance if I mess it up. But
Tom, if
I
you want to
think
shoot it to me when you get it done, I'll take a look at it and get back to you.
that'd be great. That would be great. Probably you and I iterating a couple times will reduce things that people
Yeah.
don't really want to read.
Right.
That sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you,
fair enough.
because I think the combination of these two suggestions are really helpful. And yeah, so thank you too for working on that. That will be an action item, and we'll look forward to seeing your revised document within about a week.
I think we should be able to do that, I think.
Okay, and Tom, I'm getting the general consensus, I believe, that people like the form for establishing their membership and having that in the bylaws. That actually might be something where we put that in the policies and procedures section, because that is a little more easily editable, but we put in the bylaws that policies will be established for establishing the member, or will be set for defined for establishing their membership in the NCAC. What do you guys think?
Yeah, procedures can be changed on a drop of a dime. Policies can be changed with discussion and a vote. So there, there's different levels of requirements on those, but they are changeable, and that stands up against trying to change the bylaws.
Yeah, I agree that bylaws should not be changed with any regularity.
Correct.
Never, hopefully never. But the one thing about this is I would like not to make it too opaque, is that there's some sort of a barrier there that, all of a sudden they have some barrier they're not aware of. There's a principle here of gathering the information or defining the voter. That's fundamental. What exactly gets recorded and how it's processed, maybe that's a procedural thing. But the fact that there has to be qualifications, and they include some minimal set.
Right.
I mean, local address, mailing address, contact information. I don't think we can really not have that here.
Right. So a local address might be a lot number for tax purposes.
Absolutely. It may be, and when we were still talking about employees, it might be the description of where the farmer's market was. I didn't know, but we've got to have someplace that's
so Wyatt and Tom,
physical identification.
Yeah. So Wyatt and Tom, when you're actually rewriting, editing these options, I think you should put in something about temporary businesses.
I think we should, well, if you like, to propose or not having it, or just saying, if we had it, this is what it would be. What would you like?
Exactly. Define one way or another so that it's clear. I think clarity is important.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
the
so
farmer's
I-
market
I-
is probably only one example, but I will say, because Nescoin it does have seasonal businesses in terms of tourism and that kind of thing. I would think there may be a number of them, and those owners may be very interested in land use issues in Nescoin. So
You know,
I
there's
think
this-
I would think they probably should be included in the membership.
That's going to be a toughie, because I'm thinking about, what about a food truck?
What about
Uh,
housekeeping services?
yeah, housekeeping services, right? Yes.
Well,
Mm.
that's true. Good point.
Let's
So
not
there are
go
all
there
these
yet.
questions. I don't know how we're going to address all of them, but they're all good thoughts. And then getting back to a resident or a property owner or a business owner, how I think the point is to be inclusive, but how many, like which has come up in our previous discussions, do grandchildren, if they're grandchildren of an owner, but they're not on the deed, do they count? Are they, what are the, if you've got, like in Michael's case, one of 12 or so owners of a time, it's not a timeshare, but of shares of the company, does each owner would each owner be able to be a member?
I have an
I
observation.
would
on
think
that.
yes, but I think it should be defined.
Yeah, I have an observation on that, just for people's thoughts. If we are sort of an analog for a municipality, would this person be able to register to vote? I mean, that's one criteria we could, we're not going to put that in the bylaws, but just a way of thinking about it. And that argues to me that an 18-year-old who's living here, that's their official address. Yeah, that seems like it. But that's down the line.
Well, Tom, but an 18-year-old who's living here is by definition a resident, and not necessarily an owner.
Yes.
An 18-year-old who rents is a resident and not necessarily an owner. But to put in the requirement that a person is eligible to vote in Tillamook County, that eliminates a big pile of folks.
Okay, I think maybe I had missed a subtlety there of the grandchildren of owners who are not relatives. So we may need to think about, excuse
We're not
relatives.
residents, you mean?
Residents, yes, the other
Yeah.
R word. That's a subtlety that I missed. So yeah, I can understand why that's maybe an issue, that the grandchildren of somebody who owns a property who's rented by somebody else might not have the stake in the community that we would like to have them have.
Is Sarah still with us?
What's that?
Is Sarah
Sarah?
still with us?
I'm
Yes,
still
she-
here. I'm listening.
Hey, do we have any fractional ownership in the area?
Yes, you do.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Can you define fractional ownership?
Yeah, it's a ownership of a piece of property with a guaranteed right of occupancy during a period of time with other owners.
Timeshare.
So, yeah,
Not
well,
a
like Michael.
timeshare, because the timeshare is contractual, but there's a record ownership in fractional interests.
We
Okay.
we belong to such a group.
Mhm.
There's 12 owners. We meet regularly. We have a leadership. We're registered with the state. Each owner has a legal document of their ownership, having gone through the appropriate real estate and so on and so forth. So yes, there's quite a few of those.
Okay,
I'll tell you quite frankly, just anecdotally, I serve on that board as their secretary as well. Boy, do I take minutes. I got minutes turned into hours. Let me tell you, I take hours. Let's put it that way.
Clever.
and as a matter of fact, this Sunday we are meeting again, and I'm reporting to them details of what we've been doing, and that encourages them to take participation and recognition and awareness of what is occurring in their stake in this property.
Fair
And
enough.
so I think that your terminology here, that anyone who is a shareholder, officer, member, or partner in a corporation would be covering that
Actually,
fractional
they're
ownership
individual
issue,
record
correct?
owners, Nancy.
Pardon me?
They're not owners in a corporation in fractional ownership. They
Well, they
actually
probably have an
hold title in
LLC,
their
right?
name.
But they probably have an LLC, correct?
Not necessarily.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so Nancy, this is Sarah. May I ask Wyatt a question?
Please.
Thank you. So Wyatt, if we have property owner listed, at the end of the day, even by fractional ownership, they are still a property owner, right?
Right.
So does property owner in and of itself cover those folks?
Good point, sir. I think it does.
Okay.
But for the purpose of our bylaws, because it was unclear in the last vote who could vote, would it be good to flesh it out so that someone who read our bylaws on the website wondering who could vote in their family would know without assuming?
You mean
Well, that's
including
why I
but not
mentioned-
limited provision?
See, that's why I mentioned at the beginning of this discussion today that we might say owners of record. And then that clarifies it right there. I mean, you know, we could have 20 people in one family. You know, 6 children who have 6 kids. You know, it's out of control that way. Although, you know, realistically, it's probably not an issue. But we do have to have some sense of definition.
Michael, I may have a definition for owner. Let me
Yeah.
look and see if I have something I
Okay.
could offer that's in one of our documents. So
Right.
I'll look at that while you guys keep talking.
Okay.
And Hillary just
Hillary
put something
Gibson.
up in.
Yes. Yeah.
Hillary just put something in the comment. Hillary, thank you for commenting. She'd like to offer up the idea of 2 categories: 1, members, inclusive eligibility, and 2, voting members, limited to 1 per lot per home within the community boundary. So home with 1 owner is not out of balance with a neighboring home with 12 owners. So thank you, Hillary, for that. We'll need to look at that too. So Sarah, do you have a comment on that? Because I know as we've talked, we want to be inclusive. At the same time, we don't want to have an inordinate number of
Right.
votes coming from one property. So would this be something that would be considered if we chose to do so, that would be legitimate?
So I think probably one of the best ways I can help the conversation is to continue to go back to the board order for the CACs. I think that might help us, you know, kind of fall in line with what the roles and responsibilities are. So, you know, the voting process reflects the CAC's recommendation for action by a decision maker, whether that's me, the Planning Commission, or the Board of County Commissioners. So in relation to inclusivity and who should be able to vote and who should not vote, or perhaps not be able to vote or has to qualify to vote, I would say the voting will be on revisions to the comprehensive plan or any of your zoning ordinances. It could be on quasi-judicial reviews like a subdivision or, you know, a conditional use or a variance. And then it could also be, you know, if there's something else that, you know, because we all serve at the pleasure of the board, you're an advisory body of the county. If the Board of Commissioners asked your input on other matters, so like the short-term rental piece, they would have voting, you know, who do you want voting in those recommendations, right? Because the vote reflects the recommendations made to the county. So does that help kind of better think about who do you want voting? Because that's why they're voting.
So I guess I can see a couple of different kinds of votes too. One is on policies affecting land use and county decisions and that kind of thing, where I would think if there was a close vote, that would be considered a problem. And
Well, but
we would
it's,
have to come back and have some discussion. And then there's election type of voting where it can really matter, you know, whether it's close vote or not. So,
and the advisory piece, so the voting on county matters that we've described, right? Because that's the purpose of the CAC.
right.
You know, typically what I see in other CACs, if there is a close vote, Nancy, or even if there's not, they have, this was the majority vote that reflects the recommendation, and here's the minority report, and these are the
Okay.
reasons. And so, and that, in my experience, has been the healthiest way to reflect the broad representation of the CAC, because you're not, you know, it's a recommendation. It's never a decision. So
Right.
it's the policy things like the bylaws that you're referring to, or appointing people to committees. That's, I think, where those definitive decisions are made. But for the county's purpose, it's the advisory piece with the comments.
Okay. That's helpful. I think that, so, okay. Thank
And
you.
I do have a definition of owner. I'm
Okay.
gonna drop something in the chat for you to see.
Thank you.
It's gonna take me just a minute. I gotta rework it here just a bit for
We
purposes.
really
of what
appreciate
we're
your
talking
taking the
about.
time to attend
Oh,
this
my
meeting
pleasure.
and comment, because boy,
Really happy to be
otherwise we would
involved.
be struggling.
Happy to help.
We're so we haven't even really gotten to the voting part yet, but a lot of it's going to depend on the definition of membership. So it's really key that we get these numbers correct.
Yeah, in terms of the agenda, I think we're not going to be able to cover another subject and give people have
Right.
our time.
Right.
And I'm beginning to fade, so.
Okay. And Tom, I wish you well. Poor Tom is recovering from a medical procedure, and so I really appreciate your being here today, Tom.
Glad I can participate in many ways of that statement. I'm glad I can
Yes.
participate.
Yes,
Good for you, Tom.
definitely.
And by the way, Tom, one more time, I want to recognize your contribution in your writing is excellent and thought-provoking and worthy. So thank you.
Absolutely. So while
Thank
Sarah's
you.
looking this up, any objection if we go to the minutes? That has everybody had a chance to read Michael's minutes? The revised ones that were sent out this morning. Okay. Any further edits or changes, additions to the minutes?
Nancy, I hit the send button and I think it just popped up and they're all reading what I wrote. So I'm so sorry. I think I just completely derailed your questions.
No, that's okay. No problem. I didn't even see it. So. All right. Okay, let's go back to that then.
This is one of the most recent definitions. This one had heavy engagement with county council. It's similar to what you see in the STR ordinance. So because it is our most recent way to define owners, and we did have that legal review done on that, this might be the best one you might want to consider, or pieces of it.
Is this, are chats available on recordings?
Yes, I believe they are. But
And
Sarah,
Nancy,
if you could also send
I'll
this to
email
me,
it to you.
Oh,
Yes,
please do.
and I'll
Yes,
send it
thank
out to
you.
the
Yes.
committee.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
helpful, Sarah.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it really is. Yeah.
Everybody,
Yes, this
everybody
would have
needs
saved
to
us
read
a lot
that.
of time.
You know, there's no reason to reinvent the wheel and redo the hard work, right? If we have got
Right.
something. Yeah,
So this
Nancy, I
does
will
not
send this to you.
this does not limit a number of people then.
Nope, it's anyone, right? So typically in other CACs, if you are an owner, so if a household has multiple owners, you do have to be an owner to vote, or a resident, or, you know, over the age of 18, all that stuff.
Mhm.
I am not aware of any other CAC limiting the number of votes per household. But I do appreciate Hillary's comments as well. So I want to take a
Mhm.
moment to acknowledge that, because there is, if you've got someone who is the only owner versus 12 owners, you do have
Right.
some potential balance challenges there.
Yeah,
Right.
I could see one of the 12, let's say, being limited to being only 1/12 of a vote, saying, wait a minute, I spent my money, I have title, why am I only one? You see, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And our property is 2 acres, and that guy over there has only one city lot, and his vote is bigger than mine, and you know, that kind of nonsense arguments can be tossed up, and we don't want to do that.
So it sounds like this is pretty definitive, and you said this was developed for the STR committee. So what document was this taken from? I mean, is this something that you are recommending then that would be put in this in our bylaws as a member?
So
'Cause it's nice and clear.
yeah, to give you just some context of where you might want to start with your consideration of defining owner. This is in Ordinance 84 Amendment 2. I just amended it a little bit to take out the STR pieces and put NCAC bylaws in there.
Okay. Right.
But this is the one Mr. Kearns, Mr. Sargent, the committee, we all looked at. It's the most current definition I have that probably has also had the most work go into it. So that's what I would share.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. That's
Sarah,
very helpful.
if you could give us the exact source document where this information was derived from, I can put it as a footnote so that if somebody wants to know where the heck we came up with that definition.
Yep.
Because it sounds like it's a good one, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yep. So it's Tillamook County Ordinance 84 Amendment 2. And so, Tom, I just put that language in.
Gotcha. Got it.
Yep. So that's
And my intent
obviously
is,
refined just a bit.
yeah, what I'm going to do is say something to the effect of, this language is consistent with that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Mhm.
And if
Right.
we're just, you know, we're not quoting it, we're just going to say, we believe it's consistent.
Mhm. And
Okay,
now,
well, thank you.
yep, and that is a separate standalone ordinance, so that is not our land use ordinance. I do have a definition of owner in the land use ordinance, but it is not as legally clear,
Fair enough.
right? So if you want something that's more broad, Nancy, I can send that to you too, if you want to share that with the group, but
Yeah.
this
Sure.
is the
Well-
one we've worked on a lot.
Yeah,
if you've
no,
worked
it
on
sounds
it a
like that's
lot, and
really the
it's
one you're
the most
recommending.
recent, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what we need to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
It would be helpful
voting
though
and
to have it
clarity.
just to know what the difference is, Sarah. So, but I agree. It sounds like this one is more consistent with what we've been looking at as well in the other documents. So thank you. So
I'm wondering,
at
just a quick question. Should we have a glossary?
Crossed my mind too, Tom, but I didn't want to say anything. Or at
Okay.
least some definitions.
I'll think on it.
thank you, Tom. And I second what Michael said earlier. We so value you and glad you're here today in many ways. So, so I'm going to go ahead and close the discussion on the membership part for now, and we'll plan to resume it at the next meeting in 2 weeks. And we will look forward to the new document coming from Wyatt and Tom. And Wyatt, do you still feel the need to get together with Sarah to look at boundary issues?
No, I think we need to discuss what boundary issues that we want to incorporate to make clear what we intend to do. But I think I'm cool with what we've got so far.
Okay.
As far as
so
it's
I guess
gone.
and Sarah, we would love to have you at the next meeting if you have time. That would be really terrific. You
Yeah.
add so much value. So thank you again for your time.
No, my pleasure.
Um,
And then that way, if I need to talk to county council,
Yeah.
I can do that. So no, I'm so thankful to be included. Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate it. So I'm going to go back to minutes and then we go to public comment because we just have a few minutes left. Did everybody have a chance to look at Michael's minutes? Does anyone have any further corrections or changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as corrected, and thank you very much, Michael, for
Sure.
doing them.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for your comments. It really does help.
Okay, so public comment do we have any comments from Hillary or Roger?
Yeah, if the major goal of the NCAC is to advise the county on land use issues, I do not understand how we can have any members of the NCAC who do not live within the community boundary. I'm totally confused as to what the boundary is for membership in the NCAC. I've never seen that written down anyplace. I always assumed it was the NCAC boundary map, which is very, very specific. And it does not seem fair that people living outside that boundary should be giving advice on land use issues for the Nescoin area. Currently, we have a member of the steering committee and one of our officers who lives outside of the Nescoin community boundary. So I think that's an issue that really needs to be addressed, because I don't think people should be giving advice on land use when they're not even in the boundary of that land use. I want to thank you for letting us be in this meeting too, because it's very helpful. And I think it's really nice to see the bylaws committee working this hard on issues that should have been solved many, many years ago, I think. I personally find the whole Nescoin community boundary to be totally out of date. We have so many different diverse communities within that boundary, including Sahali Shores, the hills of Nescoin, Hawk Creek Hills, the ridge where I live, North Nescoin, South Beach, who have obviously want to be separate communities since they're gated communities, and they all have very, very, very different interests when it comes to land use. That's just my personal editorial comment. Also, when it comes to voting, I think that's going to be a very difficult issue. I have 2 residencies here, and I have 6 tax lots. How many votes do I get? The other issue that was discussed today was employees, and I don't see any difference between an employee and an operator, because an operator of a business is an employee of the owner, obviously. So I think some of that language is going to be very, very difficult. Thank you. That's the only comments I have.
Thank you, Roger. Just a moment, Michael. Thank you for your comments. So let me just clarify. You're feeling that people who are owners of property that don't reside on the property don't have any interest in land use issues?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I said the only people I think that should be able to vote are those who live within the Nescoin community boundary. I mean, you have to have a boundary. I don't see how you can possibly have a different boundary for NCAC membership that's different from the community boundary.
But you're saying live in. So
No,
are
I
you
didn't
saying
say living. No, own property.
Okay.
We all,
Okay.
many of us, I mean, Nescoin's a resort community. 70% of the people of the houses here
Right.
are either second homes or rentals. So we all have a great interest in the community, but we don't necessarily reside here. No, I have nothing to do with residence.
Because
Okay.
I misunderstood that
You
as
raised
well,
some.
so. Okay, sorry.
You raised some great questions, Roger. I appreciate your comments, and I hope you'll continue attending our meetings because we'll be getting to the voting, hopefully at the next meeting. But Sarah, I'm going to throw his question over to you for a moment, because I know when we've discussed in the past, you've said it's pretty clear that it'll be one vote per person, no matter how many roles that they might hold or ownerships that they might have. But Roger's framed this in a different way. Do you have any comments on his where he has two properties plus six other tax lots? Is that what you
No,
said,
I have
Roger?
6 tax lots total there. I have some
Total,
22
okay.
lots,
Yeah.
yeah, that probably are unbuildable and worthless, but I do have 6 tax lots.
Right.
Good morning, Roger. It's nice to see you. So Roger does raise an excellent point, and I actually took a note of that as well. I think how other CACs have addressed that is by irrespective of number of people in the household or irrespective of how many homes or properties you own or have ownership interest in, you get one vote per person. And I don't know if that balances things out as far as the multiple ownership versus multiple households. But that is the way it's been. If you qualify as a voting member, you get one vote, period.
If I were to put
So-
my wife's name on one of those lots and all of my children on the other lots, then would I have 6 votes?
Essentially,
Go ahead,
yes,
Terry.
everyone would get one vote.
Or if you create a trust with trustees, it wouldn't probably cover beneficiaries of a trust, but trustees, or I guess, see, these are all these detailed issues we have. And
Because the trust owns the property, not the trustees, right? But how do you represent the trust with a vote? And maybe that's something
Right.
that needs to be worked on here.
mhm,
Mhm.
okay.
Fun.
Thank you, Roger. We'll definitely take these under advisement. And I know Tom and Wyatt are taking notes for their future discussion. coming
Yeah,
up.
Roger, if you could send Nancy an email kind of summarizing your points. I'd like to have those in writing from you to be able to keep that in mind as we're working on this. That'd be great.
Okay,
So Roger, you can do that through just sending it to the NCAC email, and
sorry,
Jeff will
fine.
get that to me.
Fair
okay.
enough.
Thank you,
Roger,
and I'll
thank
pass
you,
that on to everybody.
Roger,
Thank
you
you.
raised good points, and they're points that we really we need to respond to. We need to take into consideration and clarify those for ourselves. So thank you. They're worthy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hillary. And you're
Um,
muted.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
You guys are doing a great job. I really appreciate all the work that's going into kind of updating the bylaws, and I know it's not an easy thing to do. So I just had a minute. I wanted to pop on and kind of like reiterate. I think what I was saying earlier in the chat is really similar to what Roger was saying, that we can maybe have some eligibility to be more inclusive of people within all of Nescowan, but when it comes to voting on things that are like recommendations to the county, it should be limited to the people within the community boundary. And then however you decide that may be, would be, I when I think about my house versus, like a neighbor's house who maybe has that fractional ownership, like Michael mentioned, with 12 owners, that's an imbalance. And then you have such a slippery slope with when you have a trust and it has, 6 different people, having them all have a vote when I have one vote, it's again an imbalance. And we're just talking about land use thing, and land, it should kind of go by how many pieces of land you have. And it's, that's just where I'm coming from with that. And so I agree. I have concerns about people outside of the community boundary voting on things that impact us inside the community boundary.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Duly noted, and we're going to focus on voting next time. And it really does appear that while membership is key to voting, I think some of these issues that you two are talking about and that we've talked about, some may appear in the voting section a little bit differently too. So thank you. And Sarah, again, we appreciate that you're here to be able to comment on this, because we want to be fair. When we come out, we want to be very clear, and we want to be fair and make sure that everybody knows what the rules are. So thank you. Any other comments from you guys? Okay, well, thank you for coming. You're more than welcome to come anytime. And I will give a quick update. We are still working on, I think between Tom and my health issues, we have deferred getting some of the naming standards and some of the things to get on the website. So hopefully we'll be able to get documents on the website soon that everybody can view. I think that's it. And for in terms of talking about other substantive amendments, we'll defer that to the next meeting too, but I think it was worth spending the time on this. So the action items for the next meeting, Tom and Wyatt are going to come up with some new language on membership. And Tom, do you think you'd have some time to tackle the district boundary issue, or do you want someone else to handle that?
I'm interested in the district boundary issue, so I'd like to pursue that as well.
Okay, and could you
I see
involve
that
me?
as secondary, if I can get the membership down, then I can spend time on the other.
That sounds good. That sounds good. So, Sarah.
Thank you, Nancy. I did send you, I just made a very quick map of where the boundary is for the Nescoan, the official Nescoan community boundary. I sent that to you
Okay.
if you'd like to share that with everyone else. And I put in parentheses in the header, does not reflect membership boundary, so that we're clear. This is, and it's all the highlighted properties within that are in that map.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much. In terms of other, Michael and I will be getting agendas out. Michael will get minutes out within a week, and the video will be up. So if anybody needs to check this, Jeff usually gets the video up pretty quickly. So I think if there are no objections, I'll adjourn the meeting. Okay, meeting adjourned at 11:06. Thank you all. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and I'm going to stop the recording. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.